The velvet dark sea of interstellar space ended in a sun-washed haze as the Terran diplomatic escort frigate Gentian's Grace slid into stationary orbit above Vespera. From a distance, the vessel looked almost ornamental, a white gold spine 50 meters long, flanked by petal-shaped radiator vanes that glimmered like stained glass. Too small to intimidate, just large enough to seem respectable. The perfect prop for Ambassador Elijah Vance's recital of human good intentions at the 109th session of the Peace Conclave. Captain Miriam Darrow, however, saw the ship's silhouette with different eyes. She saw the impossible curve of composite rails folded like a Mobius ribbon around the frigate's core. She heard again the hush of sworn engineers promising that a kinetic lance 200 meters long could be wound inside a hull a quarter that length. She felt the weight of a master access pendant that, by secret treaty, outranked every code in the fleet except the president's own. Planetary-scale rail cannon, smuggled piece by piece through contested sectors and reassembled in near-Earth shadow docks, the Gentian's Grace was, by internal volume, 90% weapon wrapped in 10% lie, and not a soul at the conclave was meant to know. The other half of the masquerade was Elijah Vance himself, whose diplomatic record sparkled like a comet trail. The galaxy's media believed he had requested only the smallest armed escort so that human delegates would appear humble. Vance knew better. He had asked for the Gentian's Grace because he trusted Miriam Darrow, and because certain quarters of Terran intelligence predicted that the Vesperan session would collapse into violence the moment the ink was dry on the ceasefire protocols. A collapsible doomsday device might buy time to escape, or, in the unspoken extreme, end the argument permanently. Darrow drifted along the command gallery, magnetic boots clicking quietly, gaze locked on the planet below. Vespera's dayside was a swirl of amber deserts and turquoise seas, a place so beautiful it made her fists clench with the knowledge that warships already orbited out of sensor range, hidden behind the planet's moon. "Message from the surface," Lieutenant Haruta announced. "Ambassador Vance requests final clearance. Civilian channels only. He wants the landing shuttle launched within 8 minutes." She nodded. "Prep Shuttle 1, and send a burst to the officer of the watch aft. Secure the core, red level seals." Haruta's dark eyes flickered. He had been briefed in outline, sworn to silence, yet still did not quite believe that their frigate's heart could hurl a ton of magnetically clawed tungsten at near-relativistic velocity. The shuttle kissed off, white thrusters carving ion ribbons down toward a pearl cloud deck. In the silence that followed, Miriam touched a panel and dimmed the bridge lights. "Run a passive net," she said softly. "I want drift complements, vector analysis, anything that doesn't ping active." 4 minutes passed before the lieutenant spoke again. "Picking up irregularities behind the Vesperan moon. Not ours. Profile suggests maybe 200 hulls. Distributed arc." So the reports were true. The Tamil-Hay alliance had brought the whole iron choir. Battleships the size of mountains, cruisers bristling with graviton lances, swarms of auxiliary frigates. By treaty, they were supposed to keep a minimum distance of 4 light seconds from the Conclave's neutrality zone. They were half that already. "Maintain lock," Darrow said. Her tone never cracked, but sweat gathered under her collar. Beneath her feet, the Gentian's Grace seemed to hum with anticipation, as though the coiled weapon could sense the massing threat. Ambassador Vance's diplomatic party glided above marble floors toward the Grand Chamber. 50 Terrans in cobalt dress uniforms escorted by robed ushers of the 8 founding species. Media drones hovered a polite 20 meters behind, projectors capturing the procession for billions of viewers. At the threshold, Vance adjusted his translator collar. The door pedals dilated, revealing the amphitheater where the galaxy attempted to talk itself into civility. 1,000 delegate seats spiraled around an obsidian dais. At its center floated the moderator, a pale sphere of liquid light fractals projected by ancient machines. When the sphere spoke, its voice was everyone's voice at once. "Human delegation confirmed," it intoned. "Peace is the imperative. Conflict is the error. We convene to correct the error." Vance resisted an urge to bow to the hologram, instead taking his assigned platform. The Tamil-Hay seats, atrocious mauve thrones, were, he noticed, empty. That alone sent a chill through him. The moderator continued. "We await the alliance of Tamil-Hay, Their credentials arrive presently stretched on. 5 minutes. 10. Nervous susurrus blossomed into frank whispers. Finally the great doors hissed, and a single Tommelheg entered. Admiral Emeritus Cass Resch, draped in funeral gray, 6 eyes masked with blackened lenses. No honor guard, no attachés. Delegates, Resch rasped. I come alone to make plain the Alliance's final stance. Vance's translator rendered the phrase, but something about the pauses suggested Resch was savoring each syllable, a predator sampling the scent of blood. Our fleets stand ready. There shall be no compromises today. Silence boomed across the chamber. Then voices piled atop one another in half a dozen languages. The moderator's halo pulsed crimson. You bring threat into sacred space. Resch clicked mandibles. We bring inevitability. At this moment, Alliance ships complete orbital firing solutions. Should our petition for exclusive mining rights in the Argolon Belt be denied, hostilities commence. The Conclave will observe and ratify the outcome. He raised an arm. Pale implants glimmered. We do not war against Vespera itself, merely against those who stand between us and rightful territory. Yet planetary collateral cannot be avoided. Better you accept dominion than share ruin. Vance registered an electric rush of horror. The Argolon Belt Treaty impasse had festered for years, but no analyst predicted the Alliance would trigger open war in the Conclave's own auditorium. A frantic subdermal ping reached his cranial implants. Priority 1 from Captain Darrow. We see them. Fleet size greater than projected. Standing by. Vance replied with 2 words. Assess options. Resch meanwhile began reciting casualty estimates as though offering weather statistics. And thermal bloom models predict sterility on 7 continents should kinetic yields exceed 3 terawatt threshold. Elijah Vance, son of a refugee family who survived Europa's habitat meltdown, felt something break within him. He stepped onto the central ramp, microphone automatically amplifying. Admiral Resch, he said, voice calm, you know as well as we that the Conclave cannot endorse extortion. Resch's 6 lenses swiveled. We know only that strength mandates reality. Strength, Vance echoed, buying time. He imagined Miriam on her bridge, one finger over a dead man's switch. He alone carried override authority. Earth's Defense Secretariat had programmed the Gentian's rail emitter with singular instruction. Fire only by ambassadorial order. And only once. He raised his wrist and spoke 3 code syllables into the hidden pickup. The frigate's AI recognized the chain of command unlock. Heat sinks flooded. Superconductive coils unfurled like the petals of a lethal orchid, occupying void space that a second before had been structural struts. To an external observer, the Gentian's grace metamorphosed. Graceful diplomatic yacht becoming a barrel-spined dragon. On the bridge, Miriam Darrow's display flashed. Target acquisition. They're still behind the moon, Haruta whispered. That's the point. Minimal line of sight for them, maximum for us. Because orbital mechanics is merciless. The Alliance Armada had parked itself in an equatorial crescent, believing the Conclave's rubric of neutrality was shield enough. They did not know a Terran frigate within the neutrality zone housed a weapon larger than many capital ships. Prep 1 tungsten slug, she ordered. Set velocity to 9/10 C, gravitic compensators to all bulkheads. Mask energy bloom with solar flare camouflage. Lights dimmed as power rerouted. Even so, the output spike was monstrous. The Gentian's hull sighed like some great beast inhaling. In the chamber, Elijah Vance felt his jaw vibrate, the subtle resonance of a distant launch. Only he could have recognized it. Admiral Resch, he said, stepping closer, what does strength serve, if not peace? Strength serves destiny, the Tommelhay replied. Vance allowed himself the smallest smile. Then allow me to demonstrate destiny's preference. He tapped his wrist twice. 32 million kilometers away, the tungsten rod departed the Gentian's hull at a velocity that blurred equations into poetry. It needed no warhead. Kinetic energy alone equaled the yield of 20,000 fusion bombs. Navigation inserts adjusted a fraction of a microdegree, guiding the slug not toward the Armada's armored command carrier, too obvious, but through the precise coordinates where the Alliance's distributed data mesh relays floated. Small, fragile, essential. Destroy the relays and targeting networks would blind. Gravity well detectors would go mute. The armada would grope like a giant whose eyes had been sewn shut. The projectile reached its marks in 119 seconds. The first relay vanished. Quantum processors sublimated into plasma. The second and third followed within milliseconds. Automated battle logic on Alliance ships screamed contradictory orders, and for 18 catastrophic seconds, every cruiser and battleship executed independent, evasive maneuvers, colliding with escort screens and detonating their own mines. Fusion cores failed gracefully on some vessels, catastrophically on others. Blossoms of nuclear light erupted across the hidden hemisphere of Vespera's moon, each too distant to harm the planet, but more than bright enough for optic sensors worldwide. On the conclave floor, Admiral Resch staggered. 6 eye lenses flickered with comms failure codes. A delegate from the Chloronan Confederacy whispered, "Your ships are burning." Resch snarled, but before he could frame denial, the chamber's enormous display columns lit with emergency feed. Alliance cruisers tumbling, engine plumes strobing, data static overlaying the wrecks. The moderator pulsed gold. "Explain this violence." No answer. Resch's implants cycled again and again for channels that no longer existed. Ambassador Vance folded his hands. "Admiral, perhaps you should stand down. Contact your remaining ships before they misinterpret sensor loss as enemy assault." "They are under assault," Resch rasped. "From whom?" Vance asked gently. "There is no opposing fleet in those coordinates. No weapon signatures in the neutrality zone. None that your detectors retain anyway. A moment ago, you claimed strength governed destiny. It appears destiny disagrees." The Hayes mandibles clicked like breaking glass. He lunged, but armed ushers intercepted, energy staves humming. Resch was forced to his knees amid a halo of diplomatic cameras. Above, the moderator addressed the assembly. "The Alliance of Hay has violated neutrality, threatened genocide, and lost operational command of its forces. Emergency sanctions apply. Delegates, prepare censure vote." Vance exhaled for the first time in minutes. He glanced up at the dome, as though his gaze could bridge orbit and meet Miriam Darrow's. She meanwhile sat among flickering monitors, counting enemy beacons, winking out like dying fireflies. "Haruta, status? Alliance command carrier? Drifting? No primary thrust. Escort screens collapsing. Confirmed 91% fleet incapacitated. 0 retaliatory locks on us." "Good. Coil down the rail core. Radiate all waste heat. Slow and steady. We'll pretend we were on the far side of Vespera the whole time." She allowed herself a thin smile. "Signal from Ambassador. Optimal outcome." "Ma'am?" Haruta asked quietly. "Did we just save the galaxy or start an arms race?" "Ask me tomorrow," Darrow said. "Today we bought a chance." The Peace Chamber's proceedings ran long into Vespera's night cycle. The censure passed unanimously. Surviving Alliance captains, now terrified of repeating unknown errors, transmitted surrender offers. Emergency crews prepped relief shuttles for crippled warships. Conclave historians later wrote entire shelves of analysis about the moonside catastrophe, yet none proved why it happened. When business near concluded, Elijah Vance retreated to a private veranda overlooking the sea. After sunset clouds glowed bronze from orbital fires still smoldering behind the horizon, a discreet comlink chimed. Darrow's voice low and exhausted. "The rail core is cold. No one sniffed the signature. We'll need an engineering miracle to hide the stress scars, but she'll pass inspection. You did well, Captain. You gave the order. History will blame Hay sensors. The Conclave will never suspect a diplomatic escort frigate." Darrow was silent. Then, "I still hear the coils, Ambassador, in the hull, like thunder held in a box." He knew that sound too. Let it fade. Rest. He cut the channel, knowing neither of them would sleep. The following day, the Gentian's Grace descended to Vespera's capital spaceport, ostensibly to retrieve the human delegation. On the tarmac, heat haze shimmered around her hull. Inspectors ran radiation sweeps and found only residual engine activity. When Vance boarded, he paused at the threshold, hand brushing the bulkhead as one might touch the hide of a loyal animal. Miriam waited in the atrium. No salutes. The corridor smelled faintly of ozone, the ghost of the shot fired. "You all right?" she asked. "Ask me next century." He offered a crooked smile. "Debrief on Earth will be delicate. They'll promote you. They'll mothball this ship, cut her open, fit the next generation of rail cores." "Maybe," he hesitated. "But in that chamber yesterday, when Resh's tone turned, I remembered I once swore never again to trust deterrence alone. I was 10 when Europa's shell cracked. The regulators said the containment ring made war impossible, until the ring shattered and 500,000 died without a single weapon deployed." He met her eyes. "This time deterrence worked. I should feel vindicated, yet I'm terrified how easily everything else collapsed." Darrow placed a palm against the wall, where superconductive rails slept beneath layers of composite. "Peace always perches on a weapon, Ambassador. We just hide the perch under prettier words." From the boarding hatch came distant cheers. Dock workers recognized Vance's face and shouted gratitude. Word already spread that humanity had helped avert planetary destruction. "Details be damned," he sighed. "You know, Captain, someday they'll find out." "Probably," she said. "Let's hope by then we've given them something better to believe in." The gentian's grace lifted, engines whispering. As Vespera rotated beneath, the ship angled towards skies still bruised by kinetic flash. Repair tenders knelt beside shattered Alliance giants, cutting survivors free from molten girders. Meanwhile, diplomats in emergency sessions rewrote charter articles, adding clauses none would have imagined necessary 2 days prior. And among every corner of inhabited space, rumor tore along trade routes. The Alliance Armada silenced by a single impossible shot. Who fired? What weapon could compress apocalypse into a heartbeat? Theories multiplied like sparks, each more fantastical than the last. But one detail remained dreadfully consistent. Somewhere in the crossfire, the universe blinked, and when sight returned, most of the guns had gone quiet. In the Gentian's command gallery, Miriam Darrow watched the planet's Terminator slide beneath her bow and wondered how long the quiet would last. The frigate's rails, folded tight inside metallic sinew, slept on, for now.